It's Wednesday. It's a good day to have a good day. Hello, everybody. My name's Cece Ray. Thanks for joining me. We are talking about the Real Housewives of New Jersey. Listen, we knew this season was going to be hot, but it is hot. A little disturbing, but
I like it. I love it. I want some more.
that's right. That's what I think of this season. But before we get into it, you know what to do. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell because here we break the dish. The episode that aired last night was a doozy, like all of them seem to be. And I have a lot to say about this episode, so just bear with me. Matter of fact, I even took notes. That's how much I have to say. So let me start before we actually get into the episode. Let me start last week. Teresa says that she apologized to her brother for everything that happened in New York and she just doesn't know what else to do. Okay. Why I'm bringing this up, there's a reason that you'll find out in a few minutes. But uh, if you're talking about the apology where you're running after him after calling him bitch boy at the reunion, and Andy Cohen's making you run after him so that you can bring him back to finish the taping of the reunion show. I'm pretty sure that that's not the apology he was looking for. If you're talking about the apology that you gave in a text 2 weeks before filming, which was 2 months after Melissa wrote you a text saying, "I wanna put everything to bed." Yeah, that probably wouldn't be the apology either. Now, there's a reason why I'm bringing this up too, so just bear with me, everybody. So, last episode ended with Teresa and Melissa getting into the middle of this about the engagement party. Now, what happened is Teresa comes over to the group at the mozzarella party and she says, "I have a great idea. I'm not going to have a seating chart for the wedding. I'm just going to let everybody sit where they want." And Margaret turns around and says to her, "I don't think that's such a good idea. You had issues with the last seating at the engagement party." Now, this now makes Teresa turn around and she says, "Well, I didn't do anything. Melissa and Joe asked to sit at that table." Really, Teresa? Let's try this again. Now, this makes Melissa jump up and be like, "I know you're not going to lie to me smack dead in my face. Matter of fact, you and Louis even came over to the table and apologized and said, 'I don't know what happened. You were supposed to sit with us.'" Really? Teresa knew exactly where she sat them. She knew exactly who she wanted at the table, which was her, Louis, Dina, and her husband. That got her far. Dina didn't even come to the wedding. And Louis's side of the family. Okay. And so Teresa now is like, you know, well, I said those things. I didn't put you in the wedding. I sat you at that table, basically. because you didn't stick up for me with Margaret when it came to defending Louis." Now, Melissa turns around and she's like, "You're not putting this on me anymore. I don't really care anymore." She's like, "I was nice to Louis. I opened my home up to him. I had him meet my family. I've had nothing but nice things to say about him. I've never said one negative thing at all. I never said anything. And I even went after Margaret several times and told her to stop questioning because it wasn't going to get her anywhere." And Margaret was like, "That's right. She did. She came to me several times." Then all of a sudden, Teresa changes her attitude. She's like, "No, no, no, no. I'm telling you how I felt." That's right. She's telling you, Melissa, how she felt. Okay, so let me get this straight. So I think that my neighbors should give me $1,000,000. So until they do, I'm going to key up their car. I'm going to dig up their front yard. I'm going to bash their windows in because I feel they should give me $1,000,000. Should they give me $1,000,000? No, but I feel that they should. So until they do, I'm going to make their life hell. Mhm. That's basically what Teresa is saying. What a joke. So Melissa now is saying to her, "Look, I want you to be happy. I've been through all of this with you all these years. I genuinely want you to be happy." And Teresa's like, "Thank you. I appreciate that." Then Teresa says, "Do you want to be in my wedding?" Melissa's like, "No, I don't want to be in your wedding. I'm good." So they hug it out. Okay. Now, remember what I just said. And remember all the things I just said happened. Okay. Because we're going to bring this up a little bit later. Okay. Now, after that, we are going to Dolores and Polly. I think they are such a cute couple. And let me tell you, he is a man's man. You know what I mean? Like, he's manly. He's like, "Ooh, take care of my woman." That's right. He wants to take care of her. And I love it. And I'm here for it. However, Frank, he's having a little bit of a hard time with that. Now, we're at her house and they are finishing up the shoot for the calendar. Because remember, Frank wound up not being able to attend because he was in the hospital. So Frank comes in and, you know, I love the banter between him and Polly because, Polly calls him Mr. Potato Head and Frank calls him, uh, what is it? Buzz Goodyear. Yeah, from the Toy Story, which is kind of funny. And so Frank now says to Polly, "Hey, all the boys are getting together to go out. Would you like to come?" And Polly kind of looks at Dolores. Frank goes, "What are you looking at her for? You need her permission?" And Dolores jumps in and says, "No, no, no. He's looking at me because we might have plans." And he's like, "Well, I'll get your number." And Polly basically is like, "Well, you've never called me before." And Frank's like, "'Cause I always went through Dolores." And Polly says, "Well, you don't send a woman to do a man's job." Yikes. Ouch. Awkward. That didn't really land very well. You know what I mean? But Frank tables it for then and goes on to be the Easter Bunny, which is so funny with him dressed up with these ears outside with these Easter eggs. I mean, that would make me want to buy the calendar just for that picture. Just saying. But I love Dolores. I love Frank. I love Polly. And we all know they're on a good note now. And I just love it because I love to see Dolores happy. She's one of my favorite housewives. She's genuine. She's honest, she's nice, don't mess with her or you get Patterson coming out in her, but I really, really like her. Then, we have a scene now where it's, Margaret and Melissa and Jackie. They're having lunch, and they're talking about the mozzarella party and why Jackie wasn't invited. And they're telling Jackie that, "Well, you weren't invited because Danielle felt as though, you gave her the one up and down, and she didn't really appreciate that." Jackie's like, "Yeah, I did." And Jackie goes on and says, "She looked like a train wreck from head to toe," which you go, Jackie. I mean, look, she even admitted it after taping on Instagram that I think it was Instagram. That look, it wasn't easy for her to go from a housewife to a friend of, and I'm sure it wasn't. I mean, nobody likes to be demoted, but, she is concentrating on her recovery, and I really hope that she gets back to being a housewife because I think she has a lot more to offer. Just saying. Mozzarella party or how did it go or whatever. And Teresa starts off with, "Well, Melissa brought up the engagement party and how they weren't sat with us." Now, number one, okay, uh, Teresa, Melissa didn't bring it up. She never said anything about it. Margaret brought up the seating. You said that Melissa and Joe asked to be sat at the table they were sitting at. You did. Melissa said nothing, so, you know, that's how that goes. Um, so then, Louis chimes in, "Oh, really?" The liar herself. I don't even know what to say about that right now because Louis, so far, the only person in this story right here that's lying is the person sitting next to you. Just saying. It's also disturbing because, I expected a little bit more out of Gia. I know you want to back your mom up, but you should put her in check instead because Gia turns around and says, "You know what? I really don't like the fact that she's making, she's lying to make you look bad." Okay, let's all try to get on the same page. Melissa didn't lie. However, your mother did. Okay, so let's get the facts straight. Even your mother admitted that at the party. Jennifer Aiden even said it. Your mom's bestie. So I was a little disappointed that Gia chimed in like that. And then Gabriella comes in. And Teresa's like, "Oh, Gabriella, I know you don't like conflict, but Melissa really just pulled me in." Now, I kind of like the way Gabriella just got to the point. She didn't want to hear any BS. She said, "How did you end it?" Almost as if to say, "Did you finally resolve these issues?" You know? And Teresa's like, "Actually, we ended on a good note. Matter of fact, I even asked her to be in my wedding party, but, she declined." Gia turns around and is like, "I wish you wouldn't have done that because I know you're still upset." And Gabriella's basically like, what is she upset about?" And Gia's like, "I know you're still upset about Melissa saying that they were here for us when they weren't." Now, it flips over to what they're talking about, which is on Melissa's podcast. Now, that's not exactly what was said on the podcast. What was said on the podcast was when Teresa went to prison, Joe had no income coming in. In order for them to film, Teresa checks in Melissa and Joe agreed to film with him. Matter of fact, so did Rosie. Yeah, and look where that got her. Just saying. So that's what they're saying is that they agreed to film with him so that he would have a paycheck, which is true. That is true. Then in Gia's interview, she states, I can't quite remember uh, seeing them unless we were filming. Now, were they there? I don't know. I wasn't there either. Now, as a viewer, we did see Joe after Teresa came home from jail. He was taking her garbage once a week, he was fixing underneath the sink. So, was he helping? I don't know. But going back to this scene. So, Gabriella says, well, that really hurts her. She's disappointed because this was a sensitive time in her life. And if they're lying about that, that's not right. Almost as if she wasn't quite sure what to say. Like, you don't remember? So either she blocked it out or somebody's kind of telling her what to say or kind of feeding her the story to believe. That's just the impression I got as a viewer, allegedly. I'm not saying it's true. But then Gia turns around and says, basically, like, they're just trying to, you know, they're just lying to hurt you. And then Louis chimes in, he's not a man. I see you. I see you. Really? Again, let's go back to it. The only person out of the four of them talking that's really been lying so far is Teresa. And she's got her oldest daughter there having her back and lying too, which, like I said, kind of disappointed in that. But what do you expect? I mean, as a viewer, all these seasons, as the kids were growing up, we saw Melissa and Joe constantly bad mouthing Melissa in front of these kids. And if that was in front of the camera, imagine how it was not being filmed. Just saying. They should have left the kids out of it, and maybe they would have their own opinion of their aunt and uncle. But we know how Teresa probably, she would never have that, you know. So that's how that ends right there. Remember how I said I took notes? Bear with me. I'm blind and I took notes. Um, now, uh, like I said, I took notes. I'm so sorry. And I had a brain fart on top of it. Now we see Danielle and Melissa. And they are at uh I don't know what you want to call it, but it's where Melissa is pulling clothes for Envy. Now, this is what I find kind of interesting. Leading up to this season, Melissa's been dragged, and I mean dragged in social media to the point that she doesn't even have a store. She never had a store. She never had Envy. Like, people don't know what she's talking about. She's a liar. She's this and that. However, she's pulling clothes for Envy. Now, what I find interesting is that Danielle, she lives in New Jersey. She's acting as though Melissa has a store, that it's all valid. Matter of fact, she says in her interview, "I look up to her. This is where I want to be. I want to have my own store." Just food for thought. However, I love Danielle because she was explaining that during COVID, she was trying to find something to do or whatever, and she came up with Bougie Kids, which is these outrageous girly clothes for mothers and daughters. Oh my God. I'm obsessed. I have 5 girls, and if they were young, like Danielle's daughter, I would be all up with this Bougie Kids. What a great idea. So her and Melissa are talking, and she's saying that, it kind of disturbs her to see Joe and Teresa where they are and not being on good terms because her and her brother are not on good terms. They haven't spoken in quite some time. And she blames the wife. And Melissa says, "Let me play devil's advocate here because I am the wife in this scenario." And she's trying to explain to Danielle, "Look, I have tried to get these two together and I can only do so much. If Joe doesn't want to, there's only so much I can do." And Danielle's like, "Really? You sure about that?" Because she is convinced that her brother's wife is the problem. And Melissa's trying to explain it's not always the wife's fault. So that's where that conversation went. Okay. And then Melissa got a little messy there. She decides to tell Danielle, "Yeah, you were right about Jackie. She looked you up and down. And she looked you up and down because she thought you looked like trash from head to toe." Yikes. I don't know if I would have said that. And Danielle's like, "Well, I guess I was right then for not inviting her." Called that one. So do I see Danielle inviting Jackie in the future? No. That's a good one, Melissa. You made sure of that. That's for sure. Then we're at Jennifer Aiden's house. Now listen, I love Jennifer's kids. I mean, her daughter, she should have her own show. I mean, I could just eat her up. Uh, you know, the way she talks and the way she acts. I mean, adorable. What's not adorable is Jennifer trying to get her children to do their chores, and she says, "Okay, I'll pay you. What's minimum wage?" They said 13 an hour. "Okay, I'll pay you 13 an hour." Her daughter's like, "No, 14." Jennifer's like, "Fine. I'll pay you $14 an hour to do your chores." Whoop! Hold the phone just a minute. Are you serious? Now, I understand that everybody has different parenting skills and everybody parents in a different way. And I also understand that some parents uh, do pay their children to do chores to teach them responsibility, not only within their house, but with money and almost like a positive reinforcement. I get that. Uh, in my house, it doesn't run that way because we all live in this house. I buy you clothes, I run you here and there. I make sure you're doing what you want. And in return, you're going to clean the house. You're going to do chores in the house that you live in, that you make a mess in, that you eat in. Just saying. So, $14 an hour. Hi, Jennifer, over here. I'll clean your house for $14 an hour. I mean, really? That's a little insane. Just saying. That's insane. So then her and her husband sit down and talk. Now, this is why Jennifer and Teresa are such good friends. You know that old saying, I'll tell you who you go with and I'll tell you what you are? I mean, these two are two peas in a pod. So she goes over to her husband and she's like, she tells him that at the mozzarella party, Margaret confronted her, told her that she was disingenuous and that she doesn't know how to self reflect. Hello, Jennifer. Uh, you kind of missed a big part of that story. Yeah. How about the story of Margaret confronts you because she was under the impression that you both were hitting the restart button on your friendship. And when she's thinking you started the restart button, you entertained a conversation with her ex best friend. And now she's asking you, are you really genuine? Are you really trying to restart with me? Because it's looking a little messy. Yeah, you forgot that huge part of the story when you're talking to your husband. However, I give Bill credit. Dr. Aiden knows his wife very, very well. So when Jennifer's asking these questions, do you think I'm disingenuous? Do you think that I don't know how to self reflect? He's like, yeah, hmm. Then he starts going on by saying, everybody's got different personalities. And he's mumbling, but then all of a sudden, he turns around and he says to her, for instance, you cannot acknowledge your part in anything. She's like, which is what? What part? He's like, you know, Everybody at one point in time or another is guilty of something. They've done something wrong. Like trying to say, hello, listen, lady, have you heard the word accountability? That's basically what he's saying. Well, you know what Jennifer did. True Teresa style. Shut it down. Don't want to hear it. Never mind, she says. Because God forbid you hear the truth. Seriously. Now we're starting to really see why her and Teresa are such good friends. Uh, then, Danielle, we see her daughter. They're having a little art show for her because she missed out in her art show at school, which was really cute. Again, I like seeing uh, the families of the new housewives. We're starting to get to learn a little bit more about them, and I am definitely here for it. Listen, I really like the new housewives. I really do. Uh, I don't hate them. That's for sure. That's right. I love them so much. Anyway, then we're at the shore house with Melissa and Joe. And Melissa's mom and sister come in, and their kids are there, and they're eating dinner outside. It's a beautiful setting. And Melissa says, "Did you get Teresa's invitation to the wedding?" Her mother says, "No, we didn't get invited." Joe looks, "Are you serious?" Her mother says, "Were you expecting us to be invited?" He's like, "Yeah." Then in his interview, he shares that when him and Melissa got married, they had to invite the entire Giudice family. That's right. All of Joe's family was invited. And so, yeah, he was expecting her to be invited. And the mother turns around, Melissa's mom, and says, "Listen, I like Louis. I wish them well. I want Teresa to be happy." And Joe's like, well, she's making a huge statement. Now, this is what I like. Melissa shuts that conversation down. She's like, "We're not going to talk about this any longer with the kids here." So her mother's like, "Kids, can you leave the table for a minute and let the adults talk?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." That's how it's supposed to be. Hello, Teresa. Take a page out of Melissa's book. I know that might kill you, but that's how it's supposed to be. Don't be talking in front of the kids. This is why your niece and your nephews, Teresa, don't have anything bad to say about you. They don't look at you any differently because Melissa and Joe don't talk about you in front of them. Unlike you, you have spoken badly about Melissa in front of your kids for years. How do I know this? Because as a viewer, I have seen it on television. So I really respect the fact that Melissa shut that conversation down and waited for the kids to leave. And then Joe starts, number one, reminiscing about how Melissa's mom and her family were always there for his parents. They even, you know, show you footage of uh, Teresa and Joe's dad with Melissa's mom, and they're cutting up and carrying on. And, she starts to tear up a little bit when he's talking about this. And, he says, "My dad's last words were 'love each other.'" And he's like, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." So, Melissa's sister says, "Have you tried talking to Louis?" Now, Joe gives us a little bit of tea here that we didn't know about. He says, "Yes, after the reunion, I called Louis and I said, I want this to be better. I want to end this." And Louis says, how can I help you? What do you need?" Joe says, "Tell my sister to admit that she was wrong and I'll put an end to it. This will be over. I'll forgive, forget." And Louis turns around and says, "She's not going to do that." Now, I want you to think about that a second. Let's go back to the very beginning, the first thing I said, where Teresa is telling everybody how she apologized to her brother about what was said at the reunion. She doesn't know what else to do. Let's think about this. She didn't apologize. She had no intention of apologizing. Not whatsoever. So when Melissa sent that text after the reunion on the way home saying, "I want to stop this. I want to put this to bed. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I just want to forgive." And they didn't hear from her until 2 weeks before filming. And then she says, "I'm sorry." By the tone of that text, when I saw it, I knew that Louis spoon fed her that text. He just as well had written it himself. She didn't want to say, "I'm sorry." She's revengeful. I mean, hello. How long has New Jersey been on? How long has Melissa been on? And she's still going off about, "She got on the show behind my back." Who cares? Matter of fact, did you ever think for a second a feather in one hat is a feather in all? You're on a successful show. Spread the wealth. You want your brother to be successful? You want his wife to be successful? You want your cousins to be successful? Oh, no, no, no. We couldn't do that. Mm-mm. She had no intention of apologizing. And that tells you that right there. Louis said it. So there's some tea there for you. Now, Joe really is worked up, as you can imagine. And now they have boys' night. And first, all the boys get together and I love seeing the husbands together. I mean, they all genuinely like each other. They genuinely get along. And I really like seeing that. I really do. You can see that most of them are genuinely they're friends. On and off camera, they're friends. And first they're talking a little bit about Frank. He's talking about what Paulie said, going back to don't send a woman to do a man's job. We knew it stung because he brought it up again. And Joe basically is saying to him, do you miss Dolores? Frank's like, "Well, yeah, I mean, things have changed since she's been with Polly. I don't see her anymore. She's not home. And I miss the relationship we had, and Joe's, like, standing there shaking his head, and he's like, "You miss her." And you really see, how much Frank loves Dolores, and he even says, "I put my own feelings to the side because I wanna see her happy." You know, listen, Frank was no angel, obviously, he cheated on her while she was pregnant, they wind up divorcing, but he's always been there, he's always been the man in Dolores's life, and now she has somebody else that's the man in her life, and he's having a really, really hard time with that. What I'm wondering about is what does Brittany think when she watches these episodes? Just saying. Hi, Brittany. Anyway, so they talk about that, and then of course they're getting into it about Joe and his sister and Louis, and you know, he's worked up. Joe is worked up. So when Louis arrives, everybody's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're talking about, the bachelor party, and they're all getting, like, hipped up about that. Yeah. And, Joe turns around and says, "Who are you gonna invite to the bachelor party?" Louis looks at him. "I don't understand." Joe's like, "Well, let me ask you. You're having a wedding, right?" "Yeah." Joe's like, "How many people you inviting to the wedding?" Louis's like, "About 200 or so. Why are you asking me all these questions?" Joe says, "They're all close family and friends." Louis's like, "Yeah." Joe goes, "Well, you know what? I just found out that Melissa's family is not invited to the wedding." So I think it was Frank that turns around and says to Louis, "Why why aren't you inviting Melissa's family?" And now Louis shares some tea. He says, "Not much I can do because Teresa put her foot down. She didn't want to invite them." Wow. Mhm. "Miss, I've changed." She has not changed, not one single bit. So Joe turns around and says, "That's a slap in the face." And Louis responds, "Well, everybody's getting slapped." Joe's like, "What do you mean?" And of course, Joe's like getting worked up and he's pounding the table. And Louis like, "Calm down, stop with all this shenanigans." And, Louis goes, "What do you expect? Your sister's hurt because your wife is lying on a podcast telling everybody that, you know, this family wouldn't eat if it wasn't for you." Now, Bravo shared that podcast, and that is not what they said. Remember? So Joe says that's not what was said, you know? And so after everybody's gotten a little heated and you think punches are going to be thrown, Joe's basically like, "I'm hurt." And Louis like, "I can see you're hurt. I can really see it." He's like, "You need to talk to your sister." But then it flips over to Joe in an interview and he says, "How's that going to work?" We sit down, You know what she's gonna say? You didn't defend Louis. Like, there's always some excuse because Teresa is never accountable for her own actions. So true. We have never seen Teresa take accountability for anything. All these years, we've never seen her take accountability. Matter of fact, I think the only time she's ever taken accountability is when she was made to, and that's when she went to prison. And to be quite honest, I'm not quite sure she deserved to go to prison. I think that how that went down was Joe Giudice was like, "Trey, just sign this paperwork and get out. Just sign it. Stop giving me a hard time." That might have been how that went down. So, do I think she should have been sent to prison? No, I don't. I think she was made an example of, and I didn't agree with it. But with that being said, she is never accountable for her own actions. She's never wrong. She never says sorry. She never changes it. Nothing. The only thing she's ever concerned with is have her back, do what she says, and if you don't do that, she's going to take revenge out on you. And that's how it's always been. So that's how it ends, people. Now, they do give you a little glimpse of next week's episode. And you see that Joe does call his sister and she's awkward. She's like, so you want to make peace? You know how she's got that blank look? Well, she's like that because Louis is literally writing down stuff, trying to tell her what to say. How's that going to go? Guess we'll have to wait and find out. However, there is a few things that I do want to say. I know I've said so much already. Why stop now? But on Watch What Happens Live, Melissa Gorga was a guest on there. And, it was quite interesting because Andy was asking questions. Um, you know, he was asking a question about her. Sorry, remember the note thing? Yeah, I'm trying to see my notes at the same time. Um, he was asking her a question about did she really expect to be in the wedding? And listen, Melissa had a really good answer. She was like, technically, she didn't care about being in the wedding or not. But her feelings were hurt for the fact that she's been her sister-in-law for 20 years. 20 years. Louis' sisters came in the picture like yesterday. And so her feelings were a little hurt there. Uh, which is true. I see her point completely. Um, the question also came in about do you regret how you treated uh Kathy and Rosie and Caroline. And you know, she really answered the question. She said, "Look, we did what Teresa asked. We To prove we had her back, we cut them out of our lives." And she said, "Joe and I both truly regret that because when it came to Kathy and Rosie, they genuinely love them and they do regret it." And hey, listen, I believe that 100%, by the way. You could see that if you ever want to really get a good look, binge watch. Go ahead. binge watch New Jersey, um, because you really do get that vibe. Teresa didn't want anything to do with Melissa. She's always bad-mouthed her. She never liked her. She had a problem with her brother. This is way before, they even came on the show. But because they came on to the show, I don't even think it had to do with asking for her permission, which is what she expected. Just because they came onto the show, period, she was out for blood. She still is out for blood. And how many years later? So she could cut Kathy out fairly quickly. Remember the whole cut the cancer out situation? But she couldn't quite cut Melissa out that quickly because that's her brother's wife. Um, I definitely think they got, a raw deal there because Melissa and Joe and Kathy and Rosie, they genuinely did love each other. You could see that. And but this is what they did. Even though Teresa is saying they never had my back, they never acted like family. Well, they did. Look what they did. They literally pushed their own cousins away that they loved to prove their loyalty to you. Anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there too. And the question also came about how Melissa felt and about Gia and how Gia said that they were never around. And you could really see that Melissa was really hurt. And she said she was hurt, but you could really, really see that. So, were they around when the cameras weren't rolling? I don't know. I wasn't there. But I do know that Gia lied and said that, Melissa was only lying to hurt her mother and all this stuff when the only person so far in this season, especially this episode we're talking about, the only person that lied was Teresa. Just saying for all the Melissa haters out there. And listen, I don't have a dog in the fight, but fact is fact. And so far, Teresa's the only one that's lied. However, I've been talking and talking and talking and talking, and I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your opinions. You know I do. But before you do, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and then get in that comment section because I want to hear your thoughts. I love it because here we break the dish.